The IDF's operations in southern Lebanon are expanding and hitting new Hezbollah targets, making good on a promise by senior officials that if Hezbollah does not accept Israel's ceasefire conditions, the military pressure on them will only increase. Even while the ground forces are moving into new areas, the Air Force continues to pound Hezbollah positions in the Dahya neighborhood of southern Beirut. On the southern front, the IDF continues to methodically degrade the hardcore of remaining Hamas terrorists in and around the northern sector of the Gaza Strip. This operation has been ongoing for 6 weeks now, and it is scheduled to continue for a few more weeks unless Hamas surrenders. Meanwhile, the IDF has opened the Kisufim crossing for the entry of aid for the first time since the disengagement. In Judea and Samaria, the commander of the Hamas terror cell in Tulkarem was eliminated in a mysterious explosion amidst other developments there. In international news, there are some concerning indications that Saudi Arabia is moving closer to Iran, and we'll take a look at the dramatic moment when Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman cast the die. We'll also take a closer look at Iran's secret projects, with TBN senior analyst Mati Shoshani taking us through the latest developments in the Middle East. Guys, there's a lot to cover, so let's dive into the details. I'm Yair Pinto, and this is your Boots on the Ground report about what is happening in Israel on the 404th day of the war against Hamas, Hezbollah, the Houthis in Yemen, and all the Shiite militias in Iraq and Syria, all operating under the auspices of Iran, the head of the axis of evil in the Middle East. Before we begin, please take a second to look for the subscribe button and click on it so you'll never miss another episode of Boots on the Ground. We at TBN Israel are working hard to bring you up-to-date and detailed content on what is happening in Israel. So please visit our website at tbnisrael.com and stay tuned to the truth. Even as reports have emerged of negotiations for a ceasefire in Lebanon, Hezbollah rockets have continued to be fired into Israel. 2 civilians in the coastal city of Nahariya were killed by a Hezbollah rocket on Tuesday afternoon, and other Israelis have been wounded in recent days. At the same time, the Israeli Air Force and the artillery have launched crushing strikes on Hezbollah, including in the southern Beirut neighborhood of Dahya. The primary focus of these strikes are weapons storage facilities and launchers, some of which were used to fire rockets into Israel in the very recent past. The IDF has gotten very good at detecting launches instantly and tracking them to the point of origin, then hitting that spot sometimes within minutes, destroying the launcher itself. You may have heard that Hezbollah is running low on rockets, but they're also running low on launchers, which is even better for Israel's point of view. Meanwhile, IDF spokesperson in Arabic, Lieutenant Colonel Avichai Aderi, published messages on Tuesday morning directed at the residents of Beirut, stating that those living in 11 specific buildings must evacuate immediately as the IDF will attack them very soon. Approximately 50 minutes later, the Air Force began striking in the Lebanese capital. According to Aderi's announcement, the buildings are located in the neighborhoods of El Gubari, El Laliki, and Haret Harik in the Dahya district of Beirut. His message read, "You are near facilities and interests of Hezbollah, which the IDF will act against forcefully in the near future. For your safety and the safety of your family, you must immediately evacuate these buildings and those adjacent to them and distance yourselves by at least 500 meters. The targets are located tens of meters from hospitals, schools, colleges, gas stations, mosques, and churches. Hezbollah placed them there deliberately so they could use the civilian population of Beirut as their human shields." In parallel to this brilliant campaign of airstrikes, IDF ground forces have expanded their activities in southern Lebanon, even in places where they had not operated until now. The continuation and the deepening of the ground maneuver in Lebanon comes, as mentioned, against the backdrop of numerous reports of reaching a ceasefire between Israel and Hezbollah. This agreement reportedly includes a cessation of fighting in Lebanon and clearing the area of the many terror infrastructures that Hezbollah has established there over many years. The IDF brigades operating in the northern sector of Lebanon focused on areas where Hezbollah established advanced infrastructure, including rocket launchers, bunkers, and hidden tunnels intended to serve its plan to penetrate Israeli territory. The forces concentrated on villages close to the border, where in some cases, Hezbollah has turned almost every house and building into a hiding place for weapons. The infrastructures included numerous firing points, underground facilities, and even mosques where hidden weapons were found. The IDF entered this war knowing exactly how to achieve the operation's objectives. The fighting was presented as an ordinary process that included dismantling Hezbollah's command capabilities, harming its fire capabilities, emphasizing precise and long-range missiles, and alongside that, damaging the organization's logistical arrays. The next stage was entering Lebanese territory, the area where Hezbollah built the infrastructure for the conquest of the Galilee in North Israel. The IDF has managed to severely degrade these capabilities, but yesterday, Hezbollah fired about 100 missiles within a minute towards Kiryat Yam, Kiryat Ata, Kiryat Moskin, and Kiryat Bialik. All of them are Israeli communities and cities in the northern area of the country. This morning, they launched a UAV that hit a kindergarten in Nasser. Only thanks to the alertness of the brave kindergarten teacher, none of the children were harmed. And again, as mentioned, 2 men were killed by a rocket impact in Nahariya on Tuesday afternoon. A ceasefire agreement is within reach, but in Israel, there are concerns that Hezbollah will not cooperate. Therefore, Israel has no choice but to proceed with the plans to dismantle Hezbollah's capabilities as quickly as possible. So here, at TBN Israel, we will continue to report on every development in the sector against terrorist organization, Hezbollah, and we invite you to stay up to date by visiting our news website at tbnisrael.com. In our next segment, we want to take a look at Iran's secret projects, including a somewhat strange report we've seen in the last 24 hours from the Iranian news agency Tasnim. According to this report, Iranian engineers are building a defensive underground tunnel in Tehran following the Israeli strikes. In a related development, Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman of Saudi Arabia has made some comments that would seem to indicate he's moving closer to Iran and further away from the United States and Israel. TBN Israel senior Middle East analyst Mati Shoshani will bring us this report.
Thank you, Yair. Significant developments are unfolding in the Middle East that could reshape regional dynamics. First, Iran is advancing the construction of a defensive underground tunnel in the heart of its capital, Tehran. According to a report today by the Iranian Tasnim news agency, the tunnel will connect a subway station to the central Imam Khomeini hospital, providing direct underground access to the medical facility. This marks the first time such a tunnel with defensive purposes is being built in Tehran, as stated by the head of transportation department in Tehran's city council. The timing of this construction is notable. It comes about a month after Israel conducted its first officially acknowledged strike inside Tehran. During the operation, missile factories and other facilities in the Tehran area and western parts of the country were targeted. The Israeli strike was carried out in response to the Iranian missile and drone attack on Israeli territory on October 1st. The building of this defensive tunnel is part of a series of measures Iran is taking following the Israeli strike, all aimed at strengthening the country's civil defense infrastructure. It reflects Iran's concern over potential future attacks and its desire to protect critical infrastructure and the regime in general. It also needs to be mentioned that Iran is spending a very large amount of money on these projects. At the same time, it continues to send vast sums to support Hezbollah and its other terrorist proxies throughout the region. All this is happening despite the ongoing international sanctions on Iran's economy due to its human rights abuses, support for terrorism, and pursuit of nuclear weapons. It is also happening at a time when most ordinary Iranians have seen a dramatic decline in the quality of life due to the bad economic conditions in the country, which most Iranians blame on their own government. Meanwhile, we're witnessing a shift in regional attitudes towards Israel, possibly influenced by recent political developments. Now, Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, or MBS, sharply criticized Israel this week during the Arab Islamic Summit held in Riyadh. He accused Israel of committing genocide in Gaza and called for an end to the war, which began after the horrific massacre carried out by Hamas terrorists from Gaza in Israel. In his remarks before the summit, bin Salman declared that Israel's ongoing crimes against innocent civilians undermine all efforts aimed at restoring the legitimate rights of the Palestinian people. He further demanded an immediate cessation of Israeli aggression in Palestinian territories and Lebanon. All this marks a significant change in tone from Saudi Arabia, which has been inching towards normalization with Israel. The ongoing conflict appears to have stalled, if not reversed, that progress. The Crown Prince's statements reflect the mounting pressure from within the Arab world to distance from Israel amidst the current hostilities. However, a significant footnote to the story is that Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian did not attend this summit, claiming to be too busy. This sort of diplomatic snub is also sure to be remembered by bin Salman, and his tilt against Israel and towards Iran could be reversed very easily and also very quickly. This is the Middle East, and such diplomatic shifts are not uncommon here. In a related development, the Maronite Patriarch of Lebanon, Bechara Boutros El-Rachi, issued a scathing critique of Hezbollah's role in the continued fighting in southern Lebanon this week. In an incisive interview with the newspaper Nida El-Watan, he declared that this destructive war has taken a heavy toll. 1.5 million Lebanese have been displaced from their homes, thousands of innocent people have been killed, and tens of thousands injured. And meanwhile, Hezbollah continues this destructive campaign. The Christian leader called on Hezbollah to learn lessons from the war and emphasized that according to the Taif Agreement, Lebanon's sovereignty requires that weapons be in the hands of the Lebanese army alone. He also added that Lebanon is the biggest loser so far. We pay the price of confrontation with Israel again and again. Regarding the proposed buffer zone on the southern border, the Patriarch expressed concern, stating that there are no guarantees for the safety of citizens as long as the fighting continues. He noted that the Church is working with foreign ambassadors to prevent harm to civilians, but fears that Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu will not halt the campaign before ensuring the return of Israel's residents to their homes in the north of the country. All these statements underscore the internal pressure within Lebanon and the growing dissatisfaction with Hezbollah actions, which many feel have dragged the country into an unwanted conflict with Israel. Turning back to Saudi Arabia, it's important to note Iran's role in shaping regional dynamics. Iran has made it very clear to Saudi Arabia, if you stay out of this confrontation between us and Israel, nothing will happen to you. But if you allow Israel to operate through your territory or other means, you will pay a heavy price. Saudi Arabia, aware of its security disadvantages compared to Iran, does not want to escalate tensions any further. Regarding Israeli strikes in Syria, analysts note that Iran is less concerned about those actions, while there can be no doubt that Saudi Arabia is pleased with Israel targeting their common enemies, and this also includes the Houthis in Yemen. However, Saudi Arabia is deeply worried about an escalation in the conflict between Israel and Hamas, which Saudi Arabia has been inadvertently drawn into, paying a heavy price for a conflict it did not initiate. Looking ahead to the future of Saudi-Israeli relations, there's a significant shift. In the past, Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman could have signed a peace agreement with Israel at minimal cost regarding the Palestinian issue. However, today, after nearly a year and a half, many voices in the Arab world demand avoiding any normalization with Israel. Those who might tolerate such an agreement insist that Israel must pay a heavy price, in essence, allowing the establishment of a Palestinian state in exchange for peace. The Crown Prince can no longer ignore those voices. In summary, we're observing a complex interplay of actions and reactions in the Middle East. Iran is bolstering its defenses in anticipation of political future conflicts, while Saudi Arabia is recalibrating its stance towards Israel under internal and external pressures. Meanwhile, Lebanon continues to grapple with the consequences of Hezbollah's actions, with significant portions of its population and leadership calling for a change. This is not to even mention the many developments, some big but most small, which are sending ripples through society and culture all over the Middle East. Big changes are in the offering, and it's too early to tell what the results will be. These developments highlight the fragile state of affairs in the region and the challenges ahead for diplomacy and peace efforts. Here at TBN Israel, we will continue to monitor and update on these unfolding events in the Middle East. And now, back to you, Yair.
Thank you very much, Mati. Before we return to reporting on what's happening in the Gaza Strip against Hamas and what's happening in Judea and Samaria, I would like to invite you to visit our news website at tbnisrael.com to stay tuned to the truth of what is happening in Israel. In the northern Gaza Strip, intense fighting continues against the hardcore of the remaining Hamas terrorists making a last stand in the city of Jabalia and the surrounding villages. During operations by the IDF's Kfir Brigade in the area, forces located and destroyed rocket launcher positions that were ready to fire at the border communities of Israel. Additionally, Hamas uniforms, military equipment, AK-47s, and weapon parts were captured. The Kfir Brigade also eliminated about 50 terrorists in face-to-face encounters and through aerial targeting, destroying dozens of terror infrastructures. Among other things, terrorists who barricaded themselves in a building and fired at the forces were eliminated. After eliminating the terrorists, the building that served as a military headquarters was destroyed as well. The patterns of fighting have not changed much in the last 6 weeks of the current operation. It begins with IDF forces scanning Hamas strongholds, mainly in the city's refugee camp, and applying pressure on the two adjacent towns, Beit Hanun and Beit Lahia, to move the remaining population southward towards Gaza City, hoping they will continue even further south beyond the Netzarim territory and into the southern Gaza Strip. Forces are locating weapons caches and targeting terrorists on a daily basis. The main threats they face, as we reported last week from the visit to Jabalia, is the threat of booby traps and explosives. Hamas has wired over 200 buildings in Jabalia with explosive charges and improvised mines. Most of them are crude, using low-tech and old-fashioned triggers. The IDF has a lot of experience with these types of mines, but they are still very dangerous. In related news, under American pressure, the IDF opened the Kisufim crossing on Monday to allow for humanitarian aid into the Gaza Strip. But almost immediately, it was announced that ammunition for rifles were found being smuggled into an aid convoy that was transferred between the north and the south of the Gaza Strip. The convoy was stopped for inspection, during which sacks of live ammunition were found. The IDF arrested those involved and transferred them for investigation. 3 brigades are operating in the area under Division 162, and the IDF estimates that this operation will be longer than previous ones and will last for a few weeks. Jabalia was identified by the IDF as the last refuge of Hamas in the northern Gaza Strip. Hundreds of terrorists, including senior Hamas commanders in the area, have concentrated there to make their last stand. Although the IDF managed to evacuate tens of thousands of residents out of the city in the last month following the breakdown of Hamas control and the end of the grip that they had on the civilian population, a few thousand still remain. So guys, here at TBN Israel, we will continue to update you on any developments in the battle against Hamas in the Gaza Strip. Meanwhile, in Judea and Samaria, Hamas confirmed today that their terror cell commander in Tulkarem, Tariq Ghnem Jidan, was killed in a mysterious explosion that severely wounded him on Saturday evening. He was later pronounced dead, making him the latest in a long line of Hamas operatives who are reported to be in command of terrorist operations in Tulkarem to end up that way. Switching our focus to the escalation battle against anti-Semitism worldwide. In the heart of Amsterdam, fans of the Maccabi Tel Aviv Israeli soccer team experienced horrific moments of violence and hostility last Thursday. The fans of the Israeli team who made the trip to Amsterdam to support their team found themselves attacked by local extremists motivated by anti-Israeli and anti-Semitic sentiments. An official report published by the Amsterdam municipality claimed that the violence was caused by provocations from the Israeli fans who removed the Palestinian flag and chanted pro-Israel slogans, presenting this as the main reason for the violent outbreak. However, from the Israeli fans' perspective, it was a clear wave of anti-Semitism disguised as political anger. Days after the event, hundreds of pro-Palestinian protests took to the streets of Amsterdam, burning vehicles, smashing windows, and chanting harsh anti-Semitic slogans like "the Jews are cancer." Many Dutch residents are angry with the security forces, claiming that they are not doing enough to prevent the violence. One local resident told the media, "I can't believe I live in a city where Jews are openly attacked while the authorities turn a blind eye." Another added, "I won't feel safe here as long as these hate groups roam freely in the streets." The events in Amsterdam are painful testimony to the depth of anti-Semitism gaining momentum, leaving the Jewish and Israeli communities feeling fearful and deeply frustrated. I will also add that this is likely to add fuel to the already strong trend of Jewish people in Western countries considering immigration, or aliyah, to Israel. I want to conclude by paying respects to 4 Israeli soldiers who paid the ultimate price to defend our country in the last few days. The IDF spokesperson's unit has permitted the publication that 4 soldiers from the Shimshon Battalion in the Kfir Brigade fell in a battle in Jabalia in the northern Gaza Strip. Staff Sergeant Or Katz, 20 years of age, from Ma'ale Adumim. Staff Sergeant Nave Yair Asulin, 21 years of age, from Karmit. Staff Sergeant Gary Lelichakima Zulat, 21 years of age, from Afula, and Staff Sergeant Ofir Eliyahu, 20 years of age, from Hulon. Since the outbreak of the war, 787 soldiers have been killed in action. Here at TBN Israel, we will continue to report on every development, and therefore, we need you to continue with us to spread the truth about what is happening in Israel. Guys, the most important thing that you can do is unite in prayer. So please pray for the safety of the IDF soldiers wherever they are, in the air, at the sea, on the ground, fighting in Lebanon, in the Gaza Strip, or in Judea and Samaria. Pray for the safety of the hostages and their speedy return home to their loved ones. Pray for the peace of the people of Israel, and most importantly, unite in prayer for the peace of Jerusalem.
Hello, this is Mati here in Jerusalem with TBN Israel.
This is Yair Pinto from TBN Israel here in Jerusalem. TBN Israel is keeping viewers informed with Israel-focused news, culture, and what God is doing in this land.
Support TBN Israel today online at tbn.org/Israel. Thank you.